Every week, Question Time travels to a different part of the United Kingdom. Tonight we've come to Wythenshawe in Greater Manchester. It started as a revolutionary green housing development in the 1920s and became the biggest council estate in Europe, covering 11 square miles. Tyson Fury, Marcus Rashford and Cole Palmer are among the sports stars who grew up here, along with the actress Caroline Aherne and the legendary guitarist Johnny Marr. As usual, our audience members arriving here this evening reflect the general political picture across the nation. And tonight they want to ask about the war in Iran. Should we be more involved? Should we stay out? And what does it mean for the cost of living back home? And Peter Mandelson, why did Keir Starmer ignore warnings about him? Welcome to Question Time. The panel, Labour's Deputy Leader Lucy Powell, chosen by party members last year to take over from Angela Rayner. After Labour's defeat in the Gorton and Denton by-election, she called on the government to make better use of her friend, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham. For the Conservatives, Harriett Baldwin is a shadow business minister and former international development minister. She says she's pushing for even more U-turns from the current government. Sian is the Green MP for Brighton Pavilion and former co-leader of the Green Party. She is a patron of Humanists UK and campaigned against the Iraq War in 2003. Fraser Nelson is a columnist for The Times and former editor of The Spectator. He's criticised what he calls the UK's staggering lack of preparedness for war. And Kay Burley is a broadcast journalist and former host of the Sky Breakfast Show. Born just up the road in Wigan, she's covered 12 general elections and won a BAFTA for her coverage of 9/11. Welcome to our panel, welcome to our audience here in Wythenshawe. Very nice to see you, and of course, welcome to you at home. Let's get started without further ado. Let's take our first question, which is from David Jones.
Is Donald Trump winning the war in Iran, or is it just another Iraq?
Fraser, kick us off.
I'm not quite sure if that's the right way of putting it. The people I'd like to win the war of Iran are the Iranians. They have been subject to one of the most brutal regimes in the world, a regime which killed between 10 and 15,000 of them earlier on this year, a regime which goes around finding girls without veils and putting them in vans, abducting students. Now, this campaign, I will regard it as a success only if the Iranians manage to get put into the democratic country, which the polls show that they want. Now, I don't really see this as Trump versus the mullahs, and I'll be pretty depressed if he goes to his Venezuela-style regime editing rather than regime change. I mean, with Venezuela, he basically just left the mobsters in there, but just with their wings clipped a little bit. I don't think, after coming all this far, that it's okay to think, okay, if you just behave now, we're going to go away. Now, one of the things we're hearing tonight is that the Iranian people are preparing, in a few days' time, when they get the signal, to see if they can rise up, replace the regime, and finally make that wonderful, educated, cultured country into the kind of place which pretty much the rest of us would like to live in. I think it's absolutely possible. Now, that is the mark of success. My concern is that the Americans just lose patience and think, OK, we've bombed enough places, we're going to go home, and now we're going to leave the mullahs to carry on with the repression.
Lucy, I mean, I think partly what David's referring to is the Iraq war obviously lasted for 8 years plus. I mean, is that what we're heading for?
Well, I really hope not, absolutely, because this is causing great challenges here at home as well, as well as abroad. And I think, look, one of the big reasons why Keir Starmer took the decision for us not to get involved in this offensive is because he's very keen that we do learn the lessons of the Iraq war and the big mistakes that were made there. There wasn't the legal basis for that war. So, we've got to have a legal basis for these kind of interventions. And there wasn't a clear plan in Iraq as well. And so that's why you saw the effects going on for a long time in terms of what happened after some of the military intervention. So, we absolutely have to learn the lessons from what happened in Iraq. That's what history's there to teach us. And I think we all want to see this particular offensive, this war, coming to an end as soon as possible, because it's having, you know, a big impact on the Middle East, which is now in turn having a big impact on the rest of the world and on our energy bills and, you know, on what's happening in this country.
And
so
Fraser,
we want to see that soon.
Sorry, Lucy, when you talked about a staggering lack of preparedness, is that something you're laying at this government's door or at the previous government's door as well?
Oh, the Conservatives are the main offenders in this. When you look at how they let our defence really atrophy from 2010, I mean, Keir Starmer said he's going to increase it. He hasn't done very much. But if you want to know why Cyprus felt so exposed last week, and I grew up there in a military base, and to think that Cyprus was having to call in the French and the Italians because they couldn't trust the Brits, it's terrible, it's embarrassing, but you can't really blame the Labour government because they inherited this dilapidated military. And now, I think, obviously, we are in a far more dangerous world than we thought we were in. Like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and that does need to change, but it's a bit much, really, to say it's all Starmer's fault.
Well, I sincerely hope that Donald Trump does achieve what he is setting out to achieve here, which is to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. It really matters to all of us, as Lucy says, that it will have a terrible impact on the UK and the rest of the world economy if the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. And it is incredibly important for this evil regime, as Fraser says, to be prevented from exporting its dangerous form of terrorism around the world, as it has been doing for so many years, and to do it in a way that is actually armed with a nuclear weapon. Now, where I would differ with what Lucy says is I do think that the UK should play a role in helping Donald Trump by being successful, by allowing.
Can we just clarify what your policy is, Harriett?
Yeah.
So, because I've listened to your leader pretty much throughout this. This is what, day 13 now. So to begin with, Kay Burley was saying RAF jets need to do more than stop the Archer, shoot down the missiles. They need to stop the missile sites. You need to go to the source. Now that sounds to me like the source being in Iran, the RAF jets need to go to Iran and bomb those sources. She's now saying, that's not what I meant at all. What on earth did she mean then?
I'm glad you've given me the opportunity to say that we have been saying for over a month that should our ally, the US, our NATO ally, the US, want to use our bases, then we should give them that
But what did she
permission.
mean
so
by
there
that,
is a point
specifically?
of difference with the government.
Because the government, because Kay Burley seems to be now saying, no, that's not what I meant at all. But I don't see how you can misinterpret that. RF jets need to stop the missile sites, you need to go to the source. What does that mean if not bombing the sites in Iran?
So there are the second part of that is if a drone attack is happening on Akrotiri, for example, or our naval base in Bahrain, of course we should be working with our ally, the United States, to prevent that from damaging not only our military assets, but of course this is something which many of you in the audience will have relatives and friends who live out in
Sure, but just to be clear, she said RAF jets need to do more, they need to stop the missile sites. So what she was suggesting was that RAF jets should go and stop the missile sites, i.e. bomb the missile sites.
So I think that is very much one of the things that may be needed to defend. And I think that is something that, were the situation where we were being invited to do that, we should give it serious consideration.
I mean,
absolutely.
I think just to be clear that our bases are being used to defend British citizens and to defend British assets. But what Kay Burley was calling for, and Nigel Farage actually at the beginning of this, was that we joined the offensive. And she was, you know, I thought this was a moment where the leader of the opposition really should show themselves. And she, very early on, she said we should have joined the offensive. She was attacking Keir Starmer for that. And now, a week later, she said, oh no, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean join the offensive. I meant just help with the defensive. And, you know, you can't do that in a moment of...
No, but you also...
Some people...
really shown herself up there.
Some people were applauding that position, actually. I think here in the front I saw... Yes, let's hear from you, Sam.
I do think that we should stand by our ally in America. They are our closest friend. Yeah. And we need to make sure that the enemies of the West aren't empowered by the lack of us doing nothing. That is our biggest danger. And we need to show strong leadership, which we don't have in Keir Starmer.
OK. Man at the very back.
Again, I just want to know why the mainstream media is concentrating so much on Donald Trump. The reason why we're at war is look at what the country did to their own. How many thousands did they slaughter of their own people? I think it's disgusting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Man here in the pink top.
Yeah, hi. I believe Sir Keir Starmer made the right decision in the first place by not going to war. However, once our bases were being attacked and more people were in threat, then I think that then gave us the legal basis then to go ahead. And I actually
To go ahead and do what?
To actually bomb Iran and try and eliminate any source where the weapons are coming from or being produced.
Yeah. OK. Sian,
I mean,
do you agree with that?
I mean, let's be clear. This war from Donald Trump is an illegal war, and both Reform and the Conservatives were completely wrong to be so gung-ho in supporting it. Listen to that. The British people, the polling shows about 60% of the British people are opposed to this because we learn the lessons from Iraq, that getting involved in American aggression, which is what this is, doesn't end well, particularly when it's without a plan. And the Iranian regime is horrific. Let's be very clear about that. It's despotic, it's murderous, it needs to end. But so far, this war has been no help at all to the people of Iran. They must be wondering what they're supposed to do. Will Donald Trump be there? I mean, you said, Fraser, that maybe he'll lose patience. I think he'll lose interest, and they will be stuck in a destabilised country with a regime that is worse than ever before. It is incredibly worrying what's going on, and I think it is right that our country, was cautious at first. I'm worried we are getting dragged into this now. I don't think that's what people want.
I'm trying to work out if I'm the only one in the panel who actually wants this regime to fall.
I said exactly that just then. I said the regime needs to fall. But this
you're against attacking
action
it.
has not helped to achieve that at all.
We're midway through.
I just don't see that there's a plan to end the regime. And Donald Trump even himself has been unclear about what his war aims are. Are they to do with regime change? Are they just to do with the nuclear
I get it, but you want the regime to fall, and you do too.
It's a terrible regime. It is a terrible regime, and they have murdered tens of thousands of their own people who were uprising and protesting. But you do have to, I think we have to have a legal basis for these kind of interventions. You do have to have a plan of action to make sure that it actually helps the situation, not makes it worse. And then you have to, we are defending our assets, defending British citizens in the actions that we're taking. And there are RAF jets across the skies of the Middle East right now, as there have been over recent days. So, you know, it is a hard judgment to get that right. I think Keir Starmer's got that absolutely right, and it's difficult in these times to do that. But the easy thing is to say, oh, let's just all fully go in like the Conservatives and Reform have, or to say, well, let's have absolutely nothing to do with it at all and not defend British citizens and British assets. So I think we do have to get the balance of that right.
Well, Sian, listen, obviously I've talked to Harriett about what the Conservative policy is. Let's talk about the Green policy for a minute, because I'm a bit unclear when it comes to NATO. So the Green policy is not to have a nuclear deterrent and to cancel Trident. That is clear. When it comes to NATO, the Green policy used to be to come out of NATO. Then I was listening to your leader, Zach Polanski, just in January, and he began by saying that Green policy was to reform NATO from within.
It is.
But he then went on to say, but it can't be because of Donald Trump. So step 2, as he put it, which is what he was suggesting is where we are now, is to look at an alternative alliance with Europe, Brazil, Mexico, countries from the global south. So just translate that for us. That means not going along with NATO then, if we're now at step 2, as he puts it, and actually forming a different kind of alliance.
I mean, it is a very, very well worked out and pragmatic policy that we have.
But have I described that correctly?
We wish to stay within NATO. We no longer have a policy to withdraw unilaterally from NATO, and we want to pursue other alliances as well. This is the same position as the Canadian Prime Minister, the German Chancellor, forming more reliable alliances.
Just listening to Zach Polanski, he did say, you know, the position used to be coming out of NATO, it's now to reform NATO within. But then when he was questioned further about it, he said, but that's just not possible, Donald Trump. So therefore, we need to look at other alliances.
Can I tell you who's undermining NATO? Because the
I'm just saying, is that right? Because I think we all want to be clear exactly what the Green policy is.
Well, it is that. And look at who is destabilising NATO the most. That is Donald Trump. Look at the North Atlantic Treaty, Articles 1 to 4. They are about defence. They are about building peace. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has renamed the Secretary of Defence the Secretary of War, and he's taking unilateral
we know
action.
that. So the Green policy is to turn away from
economic warfare.
Just to be clear,
he's imposing sanctions willy-nilly on his own allies.
Okay, but just to talk about the Green Party for a minute, because that's obviously who you are part of and you're here to represent. The Green Party policy then is to turn away from NATO and instead form a different global strategic alliance.
Is to look at other things as well, because we cannot rely on the USA. And does anyone think we can with Donald Trump in the White House?
Does anybody have a plan B, though? I mean, who are we going to rely on, if not America, for national security?
I mean, this is exactly the position of the Canadian Prime Minister, that we do need to look to find other alliances which will also keep us safe.
But we have got those other alliances, but NATO is the absolute underpinning of peace and security and prosperity across the Western world
Which is why I was just expressing some faith in the articles in the treaty.
And that is the foundation of our security and stability. And if you look at what we've been doing in recent months with the Coalition of the Willing, for example, which Keir Starmer's been leading across Europe and with other allies as well.
Either, so you'd leave NATO
but there are other allies.
Unilateral nuclear disarmament. That's Green policy.
We are in favour of nuclear disarmament. We think it's a war crime to use a nuclear weapon in any circumstances.
All right, let's hear a bit. Kay, I'm going to come to you, I promise. I'm just going to hear a bit more of the audience. There's a guy in a black top with glasses in the middle. Yes.
I'd just like to slightly take issue with what Sean Berry said a few moments ago. I'm not Donald Trump's biggest fan, but he's actually been calling for more countries to pay their fair share into NATO, actually. And just secondly, I find this debate quite confusing, because I think everybody on the panel agrees that Iran is an enemy of Britain. I'm sure everyone agrees that Iran shouldn't develop a nuclear weapon. So what should we do? Diplomacy has clearly failed. Iran's clearly behaved as a bad actor and can't be trusted in terms of the uranium that it's enriching, and lying about the level and whether they enrich it for peaceful purposes or not. So for me, I think now is the time for there not to be dithering or delay or caution. Freedom has never been free. We have to protect the British people, which is the first responsibility of any government. And I think we made the mistake by not initially helping our strongest ally, which is the United States of America. And if we allow Iran to continue doing what they're doing, we will pay a much heavier price, in my view, if we just allow them not to do anything. My question to those who say that we shouldn't be going into war or whatever, what's your alternative?
Okay, Kay.
Good evening, everybody. It's great to be back in God's own country, so thank you for being so warm and friendly when I first
Okay,
arrived
don't
today.
start trying to ingrace yourself yet. Come on.
It's true, though. Northerners are always very friendly. Two issues, I think, that we're dealing with here. The first one, to answer David's question, if I may, Trump, whether he's winning the war in Iran. I knew that would come up, so I spoke to a former senior military contact of mine, and he says the US has three aims: degrade Iran's missile capability, stop it getting a nuclear weapon, and somehow force regime change. He said the first two are achievable, and probably that he's probably 2/3 of the way there. The third simply isn't, in his opinion, and he would know. He says, I asked him why. He said the opposition is fragmented, and so they are not a force that can take him on. And the suggestion that we could arm and encourage the Kurds is not the answer. He said they would be massacred by the Republican Guard. So where does that leave us? In for the long haul. As a result, I think it's important that we were deliberately cautious as a country about getting involved in the war. There is a deep reluctance in Britain to do that. Iraq still casts a very long shadow over what happened back in 2003, and that the former Prime Minister would do well to remember that when he says he's talking off the record. But as David Cameron always said to him, if you're talking off the record, it just means that people don't tweet until you go to the loo. I was a cub reporter on the Evening Post and Chronicle in Wigan back in the early 1980s when Margaret Thatcher decided that she was not having the Falkland Islands invaded, and quite rightly she set up an armada to go down there. Several of the kids who were on that armada were kids that I'd been to school with, and I found myself having to interview their mothers, their terrified mothers, and hoping that they would all come back safely. Thankfully, in my part of the world, they did. But as we know, not all British personnel did come back safely. And so I would say, and I feel this strongly, don't send your sons to finish a war that politicians start.
Okay. There's another aspect to all this. I mean, it won't surprise you, probably it won't surprise you at home either. We had so many questions about what's happening in the Middle East, but mainly from two different perspectives. So let's look at the other one with Caroline. Caroline Cahill.
What steps should the government take to ensure rising food, fuel and mortgage costs as a result of the conflict don't affect us here in the UK?
All right, so obviously we've had crude oil. Crude oil has soared, it then came down and it's gone back up a bit. It's generally about a third higher than it was at the beginning of the year. And that affects all sorts of things, not just petrol pump prices, which we have seen have also gone up. How can the government protect us from this, Lucy?
Well, look, I mean, people are obviously very worried about this because it wasn't that long ago, was it? It's all in our living memory that the Russian invasion of Ukraine led to the last energy price crisis that we had, that then subsequently led to an inflation crisis and impacted on food. And then we had the disastrous Liz Truss mini budget in the wake of it, and then sent all our mortgages up as well. So we've all seen firsthand the impact these conflicts can have very quickly here at home.
So are there any actual steps the government, because mortgage offers are also being withdrawn in very high numbers at the moment. Is there anything government can actually do about these things?
I mean, look, the first thing I'll say is the government will do whatever it takes to protect family finances and deal with the cost of living issues in this country. We are in a more resilient place today, a slightly more resilient place today than we were when Ukraine happened. Inflation is lower. It was 5% then, it's 3% now, and it has been coming down. We've got a lot more headroom in the economy because of the way we've been running the economy. Energy prices are going down. They're going down in April, and they're going to be lower, and they've been coming down over recent weeks. But we've got to do more. And look, especially when it comes to...
what kind of things can you do? I mean, for example, there's going to be a new price cap in July.
Yeah.
Is that... I mean, because everyone here is going to be thinking about their bills, I'm sure,
Absolutely.
and everyone at home watching.
Well, we all are.
So,
I've
but
just
what can the government
renewed my
actually
mortgage
do?
myself.
When you say the government will leave no stone unturned, what actually will you do?
I mean, look, even the head of Ofgem said this week it's still too early to say exactly what impact this is going to have, because obviously the first thing that we want to see happen is a dramatic de-escalation in order that that the trade and oil and everything can undergo. But what we've got to do in the medium term, which is what this government has set out an agenda to do, is end our reliance on fossil fuels, because the more that we are reliant on fossil fuels, the more energy prices will go up every time there is a conflict, every time these sort of petro-states
but this is all long-term.
It's medium
we've no idea.
It's medium term.
We've no idea how long this war is going to go on for, but let's say it goes on for a few weeks more. It's anyone's guess. But if we see, as the new leader of Iran, of course, this mysterious man, Mojtaba Khamenei, that none of us have seen, we all assume he's alive, we know anything about that, and he's saying, we're not going to allow any more ships through the Straits of Hormuz. So we could see prices go up and up and up. We just don't know. In the next month or two, what can the government realistically do? I mean, maybe you feel it can't do anything, but then
No, I do feel we can do so. As I say, energy bills are coming down from the 1st of April for those 3 months. And we have taken steps. We took steps in the budget to lower energy bills. We've also brought in the warm homes discount, so 6 million of the lowest households will get £150 a year off their bills. So governments can intervene.
What about things like, so Greece, for example, is introducing profit margin caps on fuel prices. You've got Austria doing, I think, unusual step perhaps, just saying petrol stations can only increase their prices on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays.
Yeah, we've asked the Competitions and Market Authority of taking urgent steps to stop what we're seeing, some of this price gorging where people are profiteering from it and companies are putting up their prices unnecessarily. We've got to take that action as well. But and that's already underway. So we will do whatever it takes, but we are in a stronger position to take the kind of intervention that needs to be taken to help people with their bills.
Man here in the stripy jumper.
I think the issue is that it just seems across that you need to be reactive, but it seems that you're too slow with your reaction and you're not being proactive enough when looking at these global conflicts. And I think just hoping for it to end or saying, let's try and end the conflict, it doesn't really address the reality of the situation when it comes to rising bills. And nothing's really being done until it's too late. And by that point, families are already out of pocket or don't really know what to do.
But that is what happened last time, you know, under the last government with Ukraine. It took 4 months to take action on any
But now
energy
you're in
bills.
government. I want you to
yes,
be
and
different.
what I'm saying to you is
Yeah.
everybody's energy bills are coming down by £117 a year from April the 1st. So that is already in train. And we will do whatever it takes alongside of that to make sure that energy bills, families don't pay the price of that, and we support people through any affordability crisis.
Man here in the front.
So I'm 18, I'm from Manchester, I've grown up here all my life. We see stuff like war and stuff go on, obviously in Iran at the minute, and we see rising food prices, a lot of stuff like that. I mean, we've seen £2 billion of cuts to youth services as well. So for young people like me who grew up going to a history class for GCSE, and where one glue stick was shared between 30 students in a GCSE history class, what hope is there? And what would there be government, and what other panellists think that could be done for young people going forward, not just with Iran, but energy prices?
Okay. Well, I'll let you answer the main question, Sian. What steps should the government take to ensure that people are not impacted by these?
I mean, no, it is all tied together. And you did say, Fiona, that so many people have put this question in. I think it's Caroline who asked it. But I think your worries are reflected in everything people are saying to us. I mean, we've just won the by-election, very, very close to here. And everything people were telling us on the doorstep was about their worries about the future, the cost of living, the decimation of public services, wanting to see more investment and more resilience. The worries that people express are so clear.
If you're in government, Sian, and I'm not suggesting this is easy, by the way, but what steps do you think a Green government could take to intervene when something like this is happening? A war that's outside of our control, but where prices are and may continue to go up.
I mean, we have left everything in a very precarious position. There are things we could have done. In the short term, we do need to see things like windfall taxes reinvested in communities on these fossil fuel companies, because some of them are making profits without being affected by the crisis.
We have done that.
We do need to see the separation of the gas price, which drives utility bills, from the rest of the energy market. We need to see renewables leading the price of the bills, because they are much, much cheaper than gas normally, and at the moment that's shooting up. So these things are getting worse, and we can do something about that. But we do need to see proper investment in getting us away from fossil fuels. The cost of investing in the things that we've been calling for decades is the cost of one of these shocks, and we've already seen 2 in the last few years. But they could have been avoided by more resilience. And this kind of looking to the future, looking to build a country where we've got good public services, where people aren't worrying about the day-to-day cost of living, is the kind of vision that people really need to hear. The positive campaign is why we won my fantastic new colleague, Hannah Spencer MP, just round the corner. And that's the kind of vision we're going to keep talking about. We're going to keep pressing on practical things too, because we have got the right practical answers in the Green Party.
Fraser.
Well, one of the problems we've got is that, look, you mentioned, mortgage, why mortgage is so high, and partly because Britain's got one of the highest interest rates of any major economy, because our public finances are always right on the edge. The government's spending as much as it can get away with, the markets are nervous, that's very high. Also, the national insurance tax increase absolutely didn't help. That's being passed down into prices exactly the way people predicted. Fewer people are in work as a result of that. And when it comes to energy prices, I mean, look, when it comes to, you say our energy prices are going to go down next year, I'll believe it when I see it, because Britain's got the highest electricity prices in the developed world.
Yeah, because we're so exposed to fossil fuels.
Well, no, I don't see it that way. I think because there are various green policies over the years. But we also apply VAT to electricity. We don't need to do that. We've got a North Sea, which we could be using a lot more than we are, in my view. And I think that we ought to bear in mind that Britain's record in environment is pretty good. We have, since 2010, cut our emissions more than any other major economy. And I'm not quite sure we need to be so harsh, so The North Sea is a form of energy security. We should be using it a lot more than we are. And we should be also looking up how much we tax the other forms of it.
It won't bring bills down at all because it's pegged to global gas
it's all part of the market that we could be developing. We could be developing, we could be fracking a lot more in this country than we have
Let's be absolutely clear. The only route out of this, the only way to get energy sovereignty and energy security is what we are doing, which is the race to clean energy and clean electricity. Renewables, nuclear, big investments. And we've done more in 18 months than any government has ever done to make sure that we've got energy security through cheap renewables, through cheaper nuclear, and so that we're not linked to fossil fuels, because we are a price taker, not a price maker.
Right,
and
let's
even
hear
if
from our audience.
we explored more, it wouldn't happen.
Woman there with a headscarf on, and glasses.
Just going back to the first question regarding Donald Trump, I think he's a loose cannon. And I think Sir Keir Starmer got it right, his measured approach. And I wish the Conservative, instead of just automatically taking the knee-jerk opposite stance, that they actually stand with the Conservatives on this one.
OK, and I'll come to you here, I promise. The man in the red sweater.
Hi. So far we've heard from the government's representative that we can look forward to just over £100 a year off. Now, forgive me if I don't put bunting up to celebrate that, but this Labour government are still complaining about what they inherited. If you look at the length of the term of this government, you're approaching halfway, if not closely to that. We don't see the difference. I want to hear from you when you've come up with just £100, how I feel better and what you're going to do, because you're telling us you're going to do more. Give me a real example, because you didn't give Fiona one when she asked you.
Well, mortgage rates have come down. I mean, I'm happy to give you some other examples. Obviously, mortgage rates have come down significantly since we came into government. Energy bills, we've taken prices off that. We have extended free school meals now to 500,000 more children. We're about to lift the two-child benefit cap, which will lift 500,000 children out of poverty.
OK, well, let's ask him if he's impressed by that.
We've lifted the minimum wage. Wages have gone up more in the time we've been in government than they did in 10 years under the Conservatives.
OK, well, let's hear what he has to say about that.
Look, I appreciate people want more, and we need to go further, and we need to go faster. And people want to have hope for the future, that their lives are going to get better, and I understand
So there you are. You've got some examples. What do you make of that?
I do like what they did for the children, but for me, you keep talking about hope. This is the first time, actually, I've heard a Labour politician speak with such hope. I didn't vote for Labour, but I'm a British citizen and I want you to succeed whilst you're in power.
Yeah.
So take this back to your office and please do more. For the people.
Kay.
Two things, again. Mortgages rates did come down. They're going back up again. They're 5% now for a 2-year fixed rate, and they're on the way up. I'm not sure what you can do about it, given what's going on in the Middle East, but that's something to keep an eye on. Something that you can do right now for these lovely people is to say that you will keep the fuel duty in place from September. OK, it'll put a hole in the Treasury.
The freeze on fuel duty, you mean, yeah.
But a bigger hole in people's pockets if it goes up. So take the opportunity.
Yeah, it's frozen until September, and we've said we'll keep looking at that, obviously, in the meantime.
There's a woman where, you're right, sort of in the...
by the way, I just got a mortgage rate, which was much lower than that 2 days ago. So.
All right, there's a woman here in the front. Let's see if a woman here in the green jacket.
This gallop towards kind of like renewables and everything, right? I mean, that sounds great superficially, but then you've gone and introduced this pence per mile for kind of like electric cars or hybrid cars. So, I mean, how does that marry up? Because, I mean, human nature being what it is, will basically mean that people will shy away from buying those things and will still pursue kind of like petrol cars.
I'm going to come back to you. There's a woman in a blue and white shirt. I think you've got your hand. I couldn't see before. Yes.
The focus has got to be on renewables for the long-term reduction in the cost of living and getting away from fossil fuels.
Right. So you agree with that? OK. Harriett.
Yeah, I think
you obviously want to slow down on that, though.
The first thing, Caroline, I would suggest is that the government should not make things more expensive. So I totally endorse what Kay said about not putting more tax on petrol in September. I also think that they have increased the cost of employing young people. So it costs about £4,000 more to employ an 18-year-old than it used to. And I would also make the point to North Sea oil and gas. Why should we be importing from Norway, from the same field that we could be exploiting? It may be the same world price, but it is more secure for us from the point of view of energy security.
How is it more secure? Because it will be drilled from under the sea and then sold on the global market to the highest bidder. So how does that make it more secure for the UK?
Because two things are being conflated there. One is price, which is set globally. The other is our energy security. So at the moment, a lot of our natural gas in this country is coming from Qatar through the Straits of Hormuz.
You made the point that it's coming from abroad. But if we drill, if we drill in the North Sea, it gets sold by the companies that are taking it out of the ground on the international market. It doesn't come to us. So how does it make us more secure?
Because it will be a source of supply. Why would you let something that is
we don't own the
a source of energy
because it's not ours, it's not a nationalised company.
Atrophy when we end up having to import it from other countries? I just don't see the logic of that.
I'm not sure you've answered the question. If it's not drilled out by a company that the government owns or the taxpayer owns and gets sold on the international market to the highest bidder, how does it make us more secure?
Because it's a lot closer than bringing it through the Straits of Hormuz.
But it might get sold somewhere else. It's not up to the government who it gets sold to.
We don't own the licences.
And then,
we don't necessarily have first dibs.
Well, and Harriet, you don't know where the gas comes from anyway, because thankfully we don't actually rely on the Gulf states that much for
we buy a lot
at the moment.
But I'm sure we'll come back to this.
The point is it won't do anything to bring down bills at all because they're pegged to fossil fuels.
And then the other, Caroline, would be the 5% increase in everyone's council tax that seems to be put into the budget now for every year to come. So those are three things I think the government could completely control that would help people with their cost of living. And don't forget that the cost of energy feeds through into the cost of fertiliser. And that was one of the reasons that food prices reacted so badly after the Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, because of the need for our farmers to buy fertiliser at a much, much higher price.
I mean, I think you're a bit rich, Harriet, to be honest with you, when you supported Liz Truss's mini budget, which was in the middle of an energy crisis.
Show me where I did that. I did not do that once, so thank you.
You were part of her party.
I wasn't.
And
I was
playing fast and loose with the economy that threw up inflation to 11%.
Okay.
And interest rates, went through the roof. And everyone paid the price for it.
You mention her, don't you?
All right.
Yeah. Well,
I'm going to move on because I'm confident. Well, I'm not confident, but I think it's quite likely that we'll be discussing Iran next week. Let's hope we're not, but I think it's quite likely. Talking about next week, we're in Croydon next week. So if you'd like to come and be part of the audience and put your question to our panel, apply the question on our website. All the instructions are here. And the week after that, we're in Clacton-on-Sea. So if you live in or close to either area, Croydon, Clacton-on-Sea, come and be part of the programme. We'd love to see you. Right, OK, another question. Gary Locke, there you are.
Should the Prime Minister resign after the Mandelson investigation and today's apology?
Right, OK. So obviously you all know about Peter Mandelson, and obviously he was appointed as US Ambassador and then had to resign in disgrace after details of his very close friendship, it appears, with Jeffrey Epstein pre- and post-conviction. Jeffrey Epstein's conviction, that is. And some documents have come out, not all because of a police investigation, but some documents have come out which seem to show, which talked about a reputational risk to the Prime Minister, amongst other things, if he gave Peter Mandelson that job. And when you refer to an apology, Keir Starmer has apologised a number of times for believing Peter Mandelson, as he says, and giving him that job. Harriet, should the Prime Minister resign?
Yes, he gave Peter Mandelson the job. He knew what he was doing when he did it. It's come out in the documentation that he knew what he was doing when he did it. And it is the case that he has caused lots of other people to resign over this, but he himself has apologised, but not really said anything more than that or taken full responsibility. And the way that people take full responsibility in our democracy is that they do resign. There's another pretty shocking fact that came out in yesterday's papers, which was around the £75,000, I think, that was paid to severance to Peter Mandelson. Now, this was apparently in the documents that it was paid so that he wouldn't say anything embarrassing. And that's actually a direct breach of the ministerial code, because you shouldn't use your money, public money, to give payoffs to people just because it's going to embarrass you. And that does seem to have happened as well. And I think that's another scandal that we've helped to bring out to the British public by the steps that we've taken in Parliament to have a humble address that's shown on all this documentation.
OK, I'm not sure about the embarrassing point, but certainly there was concern, as I'm sure you will tell us, Lucy, about would Peter Mandelson go to an employment tribunal. I have to say, not only has Peter Mandelson said he wouldn't have done that, he has also said that he has not acted in any way criminally, and he was not motivated by financial gain. He's also not here to answer for himself.
Though, is he, when he was originally going for 500,000?
Well, listen, he was... Well, listen, Kay, I'm going to come to you. I mean, you are... I don't know if you still are, but you have been a friend, a good friend, I think it's fair to say, of Peter Mandelson.
I wouldn't say good friend, but full disclosure, everybody, I've known Lord Mandelson for about 20 years. He wrote an endorsement for the first novel that I wrote, and like many journalists, our paths have crossed many times over the years. But I was not aware that he was a friend of Jeffrey Epstein, who was a convicted sex offender, and many people felt that he showed very poor judgment for a senior public figure, Peter Mandelson, still being in contact with him.
Have you spoken to him since?
I have not. I would love to interview him if he's watching and he'd like to chat.
I think
to me.
I suppose you'll be joining a queue there, Kay. So should the Prime Minister resign?
No, of course he shouldn't. I mean, he's a bit busy trying to keep us out of World War III at the moment. So, yes, it's embarrassing for him. Yes, on balance, he should have been more cautious and asked further questions. I can see why Mandelson was chosen. It's not at random. He's a Trump whisperer. He would have been very good at his job. But as it became more and more apparent that he was still involved for quite a long time with a wrong 'un, then absolutely he was the wrong person for the job. It was right to bring him back. And I think the Prime Minister... I'm not a supporter of Starmer. I think he's done lots of things that have not been very supportive for the country. I think he flip-flops a lot. But I don't think that he should be resigning over something like this, no.
OK. Man in the black sweater.
Can I just say I think it's very hypocritical for a Tory to be saying that, calling out for a Prime Minister's head when you've spent 10 years absolutely shocking the British country with Prime Ministers. Myself and my wife both work for the NHS, and to be honest, we've got 2 children and we're finding it really difficult at the moment in the times that we're living in, and you know, this war going on in Iran, we're not even running this country properly, so how can we dictate how other people should run their country?
Well, all I can see is if you've got blonde hair, I can't see what you're wearing. There you go.
I just think with what Harriett said, I feel like if you're going to hold people to account for what's happened within the Epstein files, it shouldn't be for political point scoring, and I think it's a bit hypocritical to say the Prime Minister should resign, but then be following someone that's so deeply entrenched in the Epstein files into a war. Like, do you not see the hypocrisy in that? Say one should resign, but you're happy to follow the other into war.
Right. Look, I'm sure Donald Trump doesn't watch this programme. But if he were here, he would say, because I've heard him say it, he has been completely exonerated. Up to you whether you agree with that or not. Woman there in the green cardie.
I find it absolutely staggering that we're talking about resigning of Keir Starmer or not, and completely pass by the fact that there is a high layer of male politicians, and unfortunately they are all male, who find it kind of acceptable to even find somebody who is aligned with a paedophile, to give them any job. In what kind of area does it happen in normal life? I mean, I wouldn't want to associate it personally with a person like that. So how come that we find that kind of, even talk about it as, is it acceptable or not, Trump whisperer, whatever? completely irrelevant.
Thank you.
I just understand
Do you think Keir Starmer should resign?
I don't know, actually.
Okay,
I think as a question, it's past that question. The question is, why is that upper layer of male in power?
Yeah.
Why do we still even talk about that? Those people should just be removed from public life in general.
Fraser.
I don't think he should resign because getting rid of prime ministers, I think, should be a pleasure reserved for the public in general elections. I mean, if the Tories taught us one thing, is that changing the leader doesn't always make things better. And this idea that all things are really bad, we'll have to get rid of him and the next guy will be better, doesn't always work out.
Or the next woman, obviously.
Yeah, but you know, but still, I mean, I don't know, but it's also, this doesn't even rank, it's a bad decision, of course. He wasn't exactly truthful about what he knew about Mandelson either. We now found out he was actually told that Mandelson was staying in Epstein's house when he was in prison. Now, you know, if he was told that, he could have called Mandelson and asked, hey, is this true? He would have found out pretty quickly. But even then, it doesn't even, I don't think it comes from the top 5 worst things that Keir Starmer has done, really. So I don't think he should be resigning for that.
I mean, there might be women and girls who would take issue with that, saying, because I'm sure you're referring to things like, well, Lucy, you're going to hate this, but there have been a number of U-turns, winter fuel being an obvious one. But others might say that may have been politically difficult, but pales into insignificance compared to someone who's been assaulting with a convicted sex offender and trafficker of women.
Oh yeah, like, it was a dreadful mistake to appoint an ambassador. I don't think politicians should be ambassadors anyway. I think you should be civil servants. But it was an even bigger mistake not to reform welfare, an even bigger mistake to push up taxes and put so many people into unemployment. And the biggest mistake of all is to get elected without a plan for government. Now that is what he should be ashamed about in ascending order. And whether he goes or not will be up to, I guess, Lucy and her colleagues. I mean, Lucy's tried her best to get, I think, Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Manchester, into Parliament. If he was there would be an oven-ready replacement for Keir Starmer. I mentioned that was the idea of getting him into Parliament in the first place. But, you know, despite Lucy's valiant efforts, that was vetoed. He isn't there. There isn't a replacement. So getting rid of him would destabilise the country even more. I think we've had enough of this constant rotation of prime ministers. And just once, I would love the electorate to be given the chance to make that choice.
Lucy.
Well, I don't think Keir should resign over it, but let's be under no illusion that appointing Peter Mandelson was a very big mistake. And
were you a fan of Mandelson before this?
Absolutely not, no. So I think it's probably well documented that that feeling was mutual between myself and Peter Mandelson because, well, A, I was the wrong gender, and B, I wasn't part of his faction, and I don't like the way he operated, and I never really liked that myself. So, but look, I think Keir Starmer has said it was a very big mistake appointing Peter Mandelson as well. He's owning that. He may have apologised again today, but he has apologised in the past as well, particularly to the victims of Epstein for making that appointment. And I think, having spoken to Keir about it, no one regrets that decision more than him. I can tell you that now, because it's not who he is and it doesn't reflect who he is. But what I would say is that being Prime Minister of this country, which is a great privilege, obviously a huge privilege to have that power and that impact that you can have, it's also a job that every single day, you're making very big decisions, and every single day you're getting competing advice about the risks of this, the risks of the other. And we've just been talking this evening, haven't we, about Iran. And what I want to know is, the Prime Minister of the day, did they make the right judgment about issues like going to war or not, when there is not a legal basis for that war, and when going into that war would not be the right thing in the national interest? When you are getting advice, lots of advice from your political opponents, from newspapers and from lots of people within government to get involved, you know, that is a judgment that I fully support that Keir has made. And you've got to learn the lessons when you make a big mistake like that. And that is about making sure that you have, you know, much stronger vetting, but you also have wider conversations, you know, cabinet level, parliamentary level conversations, so you're hearing more voices. And Keir has now got a lot more women around him. I would just say that as well to the lady's point there in the green jumper earlier, that I think when we have more diverse opinions, when you hear different political views and different views of different experiences, you make better decisions. And I want to make sure that this Labour government now makes better decisions.
Sian.
We do have to think about the victims, and Kay called Jeffrey Epstein a convicted sex offender. It's so much more than that. The crimes he was convicted of with Ghislaine Maxwell were running a criminal trafficking operation.
That's what he was
moving many young women around the world in his planes, in his houses.
I'm aware
this
of that.
is a really massive, a much more serious thing than one paedophile that nobody was aware of. It was a huge thing. And Mandelson, we know, was on his planes, in his houses.
Should Keir Starmer resign?
He communicated with him after his conviction, and he remained his friend. And the thing about Keir Starmer is he knew about that. We know now from the papers, Keir Starmer knew that he was on those planes. He knew that he was in those houses. He was associated with that criminal trafficking network.
He knew that,
and Keir Starmer
hang on a second. Just to be clear, what as I understand what Keir Starmer knew, correct me if I'm wrong, Lucy, and I'm not trying to downplay this, Sian, don't mistake this, but Keir Starmer has said that he did know that Jeffrey Epstein stayed in that Peter Mandelson, stayed in Jeffrey Epstein's house after his conviction.
That's very clear.
Sure. I mean, in terms of all the different houses and the rest of it, I'm not sure that's that clear.
And he chose to overlook those victims. He chose to overlook that fact and freely chose Mandelson, rushed him into place as the ambassador. To me, that is a very big moral failing. It is not to be overlooked. He should be ashamed and he should resign.
OK. Right, I'm going to move on, because I've got one more question. And it's all been, as it often is on Question Time, it's heavy and it's serious stuff. This is a slightly lighter question. There's some people I know are taking it very seriously. Adam Walstenholme, where are you? Off you go.
Is it not highly disrespectful to remove Winston Churchill from banknotes? This move appears to be surrendering to the radical left wing.
Right, right, OK, Adam. So look, just to be clear, it's not a government decision, it's a Bank of England decision. Why do you think... So the idea is, as opposed to having Winston Churchill, Jane Austen, Turner, Turing et al., there's going to be animals, as they have in Scotland, actually, red squirrels and the like, and there's going to be a public consultation about which animals they want. Why do you see this as surrendering to the radical left?
I just feel that it's a complete unnecessary move. It's obviously going to be at a cost to change it to animals, and I question where this country would be without such a great leader as Winston Churchill was.
Yeah. And why do you think it's a radical left thing?
These Greens who won the seat next to mine, so I live in the Duckingfield constituency with Angela Rayner as my MP. Obviously the Greens won my seat, and yes, they're what I deem the radical left and a danger to our country and society economically more than anything.
Well, Sian, listen, this is about the banknotes. So
we put our dreadful animals on the currency now and everything. I mean, this is a good move from the Bank of England.
Is it anything to do with you?
It's not. It's to do with how easy it is to forge, I believe. But I fully support it. I think it's really quite amusing that this week the leader of the opposition has been asked to deny that she's ashamed of British animals. I love our otters and our badgers. And Caroline Lucas, my predecessor, fought long and hard to get a natural history GCSE onto the curriculum. And I think having animals in our banknotes will help with our natural history education in a wonderful way.
OK.
I think as long as we've got enough of them in our pockets at the end of the week, I don't really care what's on the back of my banknote, if I'm honest.
All right, let's hear from the audience there. Man here in the front, you've got a black jacket on, in the middle.
I think conflating Winston Churchill and a banknote gets a bit twisted because you're saying the woke left. But Churchill's character, if you look at it really, really in depth, he wasn't the great man that he professes to be. And we have to look at, you're talking about Keir Starmer resigning. You assassinate people's character based on your own personal view and your own take of what is moral and what's not. But what Churchill did wasn't moral. He might have saved Britain in the Second World War, but his history as a man and his character ain't all of that. Like none of us. We've all got flaws. We've all got things. We've all done things.
I mean, it wasn't just... I mean, there's Turner on there, one of the greatest painters of our nation.
So why are we holding up Winston Churchill as this beacon when there's many, many people across British society in history that have done wonderful, great things for the country? Churchill is just one guy.
OK, so great people, but not necessarily politicians. Fraser.
Churchill is one guy who preserved the freedom and the way we live life today. He's the greatest political hero his country has ever produced. And to me, his life is testimony of just what one guy can do. But I'm quite relaxed about the banknotes because he only came out in these funny plastic fivers a few years ago. It's relatively new. Those fivers are going to be lasting for until the end. They're not being replaced. No. They're going to still be around until the end of the next decade. And last time I looked, only about 10% of transactions use cash in the first place. So by the time those Churchill fivers die out, cash will probably die out with it. So, you know, there are many monuments to Churchill. There was one in Parliament. There's lots of better ways of commemorating him. So I don't mind that much about it. But I do think there's, he is the single greatest British hero. Well,
Harriett, so I noticed one of your fellow colleagues, Tom Tugendhat, felt very strongly about this, and that having, you should have people on banknotes that you can aspire to, and having animals, lovely though that may be, is not necessarily telling much about the character of our nation.
I would agree with Tom. I think I yield to no one in my love for animals. I absolutely love animals, love wildlife, but I do think that the banknotes are able to tell a story about our nation. We used to have on the £20 note someone who was born in my constituency, Edward Elgar. We also have, I think it's on the £10 note, the wonderful Jane Austen. And I remember when she was announced, and my dear aunt, who was the president of the Jane Austen Society, was so thrilled. It absolutely was one of the highlights of her time. And then, of course, Alan Turing, who, as a code breaker, managed to also help us defend our freedom in the Second World War. So it shouldn't just be a debate about Churchill, it should be a debate about what we tell about our nation's story, and I think the banknote is a good place to do it, and we should still love animals.
Lucy, strong feelings either way?
Well, look, can I just say, it's nothing to do with the government, it is to do with the Bank of England. The King will still be on the banknotes, absolutely right, and I think this is part of their usual kind of refresh that they do. My understanding is that the public were asked, and as a sort of nation of animal lovers, that's why animals sort of top that poll. But you're right, Winston Churchill always tops the poll of the best Britain ever when we have those kind of conversations too. But maybe, look, maybe it will be that in a few years' time we've got more animals on banknotes than we've ever had women, because it is always nearly the men that are on the banknote. So there you go. First name in the black top, yeah.
I think it's just a bit bonkers that we're even talking about banknotes, because I recently went to India just in January, and no one uses cash there. I mean, even people on the streets are using, QR codes to pay each other. So we're so behind in terms of technology when it comes to day-to-day things, and surely, cash is creating loads of corruption. It's you can't get the correct taxes. So, end to cash, really, for me.
OK, cashless society. Man here in the blue jumper, yeah.
Would it not be an idea to update the people who are on the banknotes? So a lot of...
rather than have animals?
Rather than have animals, have people who are a little bit more modern, something a little bit more up to date.
Go on, give us some ideas. Come on.
Oh, that's put me on the spot. But
come on, we want to hear.
Noel Gallagher, Aussie.
So I'm a teacher. If I were to ask the children in my class who the people on the banknotes were, many of them wouldn't know. If you were to replace them with other current icons or people who are influential within British society, could that not be a possibility?
OK, and listen, last point, I've gotten very long. The woman at the back.
I think you should put David Attenborough on it and call it a day.
Listen, I know I'm supposed to be impartial, but I'd go for that.
Yeah,
I yield to no one in my admiration for that lovely
campaign.
and clever man. Right, we have run out of time, I'm afraid. More about banknotes, we'll have to wait another day. But thank you so much to the panel. Thank you all so much for coming along and putting your points with such energy. And, of course, thank you to you at home. Thank you to you at home for watching. And remember, next week we're in Croydon, week after that Clacton-on-Sea. So if you want to come and put your questions, go to the website and all will be revealed there. But for now, from Wythenshawe and our question time, audience and panel, bye-bye.